there was the opposition which voted against this bill. So ideally on this bill, there should have been a bipartisan support. Ideally on pieces of legislation, there should be a unanimous support in the parliament. It should never be the objective either. Why? Because dissent is health in a democracy. You may not agree with a bill, you may criticize this bill, you may agree with this bill and you will vote in favor of this bill. In fact, there has been near unanimous support for some bills in India. For example, when Women's Reservation Bill was passed by the Parliament in 2023, a constitutional amendment, 106th Constitutional Amendment Act, which provided for women's reservation in Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies. Although this Women's Reservation Act has not come into effect, because for that we first need the census exercise, then we need the delimitation, and after that women's reservation would enter into force. On this women's reservation, there was a unanimous support, bipartisan support, barring two MPs belonging to Mr. Owaisi's AIMIM. Only these two MPs of the Lok Sabha voted against this bill. Otherwise, every member of the parliament who was present and voting voted in favor of this bill. So we have had instances where legislation in parliament finds bipartisan support. But ideally, it should not be even aimed at, because parliament becomes a debating society. Parliament becomes the temple of Indian democracy, where debate, discussion, dissent becomes important. And in fact, I told you a couple of days ago in one of the Hindu newspaper analysis that for one reason this bill should be celebrated. Why? Because there was a thorough debate on this bill. This bill was referred to a joint parliamentary committee. So this bill elicited a lot of debate, discussion, and the debate and voting on this bill went past midnight as well. For that reason, this bill should be celebrated, because it is like the reincarnation of the healthy practices of democracy inside Indian parliament. And there are other things which were slightly worrying in the budget session of the parliament. What was worrying? You would also know that when a president's rule is imposed in a state, within 2 months of the proclamation of the president's rule, this proclamation should be approved by both houses of the parliament by simple majority. And when president's rule was imposed in Manipur, within 2 months it had to be approved, ratified by both houses of the Indian parliament by simple majority. Unfortunately, the voting on this continuance of president's rule, the time was beyond midnight, which ideally means there was less discussion on the Manipur's prevailing security situation. Ideally, one of the horrible stories coming from Northeast has been Manipur. There ideally should have been more and more debate on security situation in Manipur, which didn't happen. So that's worrying. Second, leader of the opposition, the allegation is, was not given adequate time to speak in the parliament. But even more important is the Business Advisory Committee. There is a Business Advisory Committee in Lok Sabha